We recently took a look at Halo's entire lore and timeline and the story behind it, and I kind of did that in preparation to watch and learn about this particular series that PancreasNoWork has done. I believe it's the Halo Hammer series. We've learned so much about Warhammer Fantasy and 40k from Pancreas's channel, and I'm really looking forward to doing a deeper dive into the Halo series from his channel as well. Alright, let's see this.
You've probably noticed by this point, but I quite like Halo. I really like Halo even. It's got a magical mix of grimdark and hopefulness combined with some of the best aesthetics in sci-fi that really make it stand out.
I will say that as a sci-fi setting, it certainly feels unique just because of, I guess, you know, as Pancreas said here, the aesthetics. There's a certain look and feel to it that when you look at it, even for somebody like me who didn't know anything about Halo until very recently, you could recognize it as being from Halo. It is a little unfortunate with how some of the recent games have kind of not really been up to par with some of the older lore. But regardless of that, we can, you know, choose to enjoy the good parts of the series.
So I was a kid during the Halo Reach in 3 days, so this franchise holds more nostalgia for me than pretty much anything on the planet. But I would say that the Halo you see in the games is usually pretty different from the deeper Halo lore. You've got Master Chief clapping alien cheeks every 5 seconds and single-handedly turning the tide of a war that by all accounts should have ended with human extinction. And there's the Foreigner stuff, which is basically magic or how advanced it is, and while the games can certainly get dark, such as whenever the Flood show up, they don't often feel hopeless. And even ODST, the masterpiece that it is, doesn't have that vibe. Things looking rough? Oh, absolutely, but I never felt hopeless playing it. Even when Romeo gets his lung gouged into, he's more or less fine by the end of the day. It's a shame Mickey didn't bite the bullet though, treacherous little weasel. But one game in Halo does have that tone, near utter hopelessness and the fate of monstrous odds. No magical Foreigner artifacts or last-ditch gambits to save the day, just defeat. While it's a prequel, so we know that in the end things turn out somewhat well, for the characters present during these events, this is one step above the end of the human race. Halo Reach, a game that has been sucked off by many a content creator, and I'm no different. This isn't a
Well, considering how impactful this is on so many Halo fans and how many, like, remember Reach comments that you can see pretty much everywhere on the internet, it has certainly made a massive impact. I can see why, and I do appreciate the different story that was told for Halo Reach. Because yeah, while obviously you can have your Master Chief winning or single-handedly turning the tide of an entire war, there's also going to be times where the humans don't win. Being able to see that and experience it firsthand is definitely a special experience.
Video just about the plot of the game, though it will feature heavily, because there's at least one novel and some other sources on what happened during this fateful battle. So get nice and comfortable while I tell you about the story of the Fall of Reach, a cozy little tale of planetary destruction and the time aliens kicked humanity straight in the balls.
Yeah.
First off, some background. If you're familiar with Halo, you'll know that humanity had been fighting a losing war against the Covenant for 30 years by this point. If you aren't familiar with Halo, then you should know that humanity had been fighting a losing war against the Covenant for 30 years by this point. Setback after setback, loss after loss, and overall, things weren't looking too good. In fact, I'd go as far as saying they looked downright awful. As you can probably guess, the story focuses around the titular planet of Reach. Reach's role in the setting was that of humanity's chief industrial center for the UNSC war machine. Imagine it sort of like what Mars is to the Imperium, and you've got a rough idea of what Reach was.
Yeah, I was going to say that it was basically an equivalent of a Forge world then, within the Halo universe.
It was also the unofficial homeworld of the Spartan IIs, as all of them were kidnapped and brought to Reach to become demigods of war. So now picture Mars as also being the home of all the Space Marines from the first few foundings. And it was also a major economic hub, pivotal industrial center and military training grounds, and command location on top of being the place where they pump out warships like nobody's business. So yeah, kind of an important place that the UNSC wanted to keep hidden from the Covenant, given that their war effort more or less entirely revolved around it by this point. It was second only to Earth in strategic, symbolic, military, and really any other kind of importance you can think of, more so than Earth or the military aspects in fact. Oh, and because this planet wasn't important enough already, there's also a shitload of Foreigner artifacts buried beneath it. So to keep comparing it to 40k, imagine an entire Necron tomb world with pretty much zero defenses to keep out the grave robbers.
It's just everything is here. Just on this one planet. Oh god, yeah. Yeah, I can see why this would be the UNSC's darkest hour. Like, how do you recover from losing Reach?
Though the location of Earth and Reach had been kept hidden from the Covenant thus far, the UNSC's Office of Naval Intelligence estimated that the Covenant would find the system Reach was located in within 5 months on July 19, 2552. Skirmishes between the Covenant and humanity began on July 23, 2552. Good job, Oni analysts. 4 days is technically within 5 months. You know, I bet if this involved kidnapping children in some way, Oni could have given a 100% accurate report down to the minute. As for how the Covenant actually found Reach, the commander of the fleet that would soon be showing up had found a luminary to help him find foreigner relics, and Reach had lit up like a goddamn Christmas tree. The elite didn't even know that the planet was basically the most important one in all of humanity. In fact, he didn't even give a shit about any humans he might have found.
I see. Gotcha. So it's basically the equivalent of running a metal detector over it and it beeping extremely loudly. Yeah, that was unfortunate. No wonder why the estimates were so completely off. It's because they basically lacked critical information.
He just saw a whole bunch of his god's toys lying around and went to grab the goods. First contact was depicted in Halo Reach, where a noble team was sent to investigate what they believed to be insurrectionist activity. Turns out, it was aliens. Jesus Christ, Oni, they cannot do anything correctly when it's not a human rights violation.
Dang.
And so with the Covenant confirmed to be on Reach, winter contingency was enacted. This means that every other thing that might have been happening on Reach was dropped, because with this announcement, it meant that humanity's worst nightmare had finally been realized. This also involved more or less canceling a last-ditch effort by the Spartan IIs to try and negotiate a peace deal by attempting to kidnap a prophet, one of the Covenant's religious figures and leaders of the Coalition. After all, it's rather hard to get ready for such a thing when you're being attacked from every possible angle. The initial stages of the battle for Reach were following the protocol set in place by winter contingency. That's a really boring way to put it, so let me simplify for you. Aliens are on the planet, shoot them dead wherever you see them. And surely enough, that's what the UNSC went to work doing.
Any and all aliens need to be gone, and every single gun that is available needs to be shooting at an alien. If this place goes down, then we're kinda screwed.
One of the first places the Covenant attacked was Sword Base, an Oni research facility, because that luminary thing was pointing below it and the Covenant wanted all those sweet, sweet foreigner goods. Thankfully for humanity, this attack took place during a playable mission in a Halo game, so their forces were handily routed and Sword Base was secured. They even took out a Covenant Corvette. Aren't Mac cannons just beautiful? The UNSC as a whole wouldn't do so hot in 40k, but orbital Mac batteries, those will put the hurt on any warship. Also, shout out to Carter for putting Halsey in her place here. When I first played Reach, I didn't quite appreciate just how cool it is that Carter own-zoned her like this. I mean, she created the Spartan, she's gotta be pretty cool, right? Then I kept learning more about Halo and reading more books, and now I'm mostly just upset he didn't shoot her in the face. Or Kat, she sassed her too. Really?
I mean, Halsey is not the nicest person out there. She's done a lot of evil in her line of work. But I mean, I guess at least she made Cortana, who kind of ended up turning evil. I still don't really know the explanation for that, but it happened.
Say what you want about newer Halo games, but the opening of Halo 4 being some Oni spook calling her out on kidnapping children and accidentally creating superheroes to kill aliens with is very good stuff. Upon Noble Team locating a cloaked landing site where the Covenant was staging much of the initial invasion from, the battle went from small-scale skirmishes to full-blown war zones across the planet. Several weeks into the battle proper, and in the coolest cutscene in a video game ever, Noble Team leads an assault to take out this landing site and kill any split-lip bastards ballsy enough to try and start shit on their planet. Scorpions, warthogs, falcons, if it could move and had a gun on it, it was thrown at the Covenant to get them off the planet. And initially, there was some success to this. The various pylons and anti-air weapons the Covenant had set up were destroyed by the combined efforts of Noble Team and all of these goddamn UNSC Army troops. Holy shit, this mission is awesome! To make sure the job was done, they even authorized the use of
Mac rounds in atmosphere
to make sure everything was killed real good. The UNSC wasn't taking any chances. Unfortunately for humanity, however, let's look at some basic stats real quick. The ship shown here is a Paris-class heavy frigate, measuring a bit over half a kilometer in length. A Covenant Shawata-class supercarrier is 28 kilometers in length. Which of these ships do you think is going to win in a fight?
Oh no. Ooh.
Remember what I said about things feeling hopeless? Imagine being one of the UNSC troops in that battle. A spaceborne vessel comes in and fires its main gun, obliterating its target. You celebrate what's sure to be a resounding victory, and then it's really bright for a moment, and the ship is in pieces. Fellas, can we get an F in the chat for the UNSC Grafton? The Covenant also took Sword Base during this mission, so thanks, Halsey. I don't think I can blame that on you, but I'm gonna try. That being said, things weren't quite screwed yet. The Covenant wasn't balls deep into Reach at this point, though they were getting there. And from here, both sides continue escalating the conflict because it's do or die on several levels. For humanity, it's simple. Lose the planet, lose the war. For the Covenant, however, that whole religious artifact search was weighing heavily on the leader of the assault. He had finally realized just what he was dealing with and how unprepared he was for this operation.
Okay.
His ground
Does he
teams
call? I'm gonna guess he's gonna call in for backup, because yeah. What I think was kind of his perspective on all this was just like a quick smash and grab from the humans, so that he could take all this Forerunner technology for himself. But instead he happened upon the mother load, so...
only been able to find somewhere between jack and shit numbers of Foreigner artifacts. And meanwhile, every time he sent a group of ships to engage the UNSC, they'd be intercepted by human ships and blown out of the atmosphere by MAC cannons. Reach's defenses, after all, were second only to Earth's, and unlike Earth, Reach had no supply chain issues because everything the UNSC was producing came from
They
Reach.
made it there,
A reinforcement fleet had arrived from the Covenant to help him out, but as far as this four-jawed admiral was concerned, that just meant the prophets were getting impatient. Meanwhile, the UNSC had redeployed 60% of its entire fleet to Reach. Can you imagine that? Imagine if, say, 60% of the Imperium's entire navy was sent to Cadia. Abaddon wouldn't have been able to get out of the Eye of Terror before he exploded. There may have been some brilliant tactics involved in the siege of Reach, but the strategic approach was pretty much to just throw everything they have and hope things turn out alright. Fun fact.
I mean, considering that, yeah, we're kind of on the back foot and we can't lose Reach, it makes total sense. You can't send everything, or else, you know, you'd basically be throwing the entire war. But anything that you can spare, you would send there.
There was also a hurricane raging on Reach during the invasion. It's like the planet itself was telling the Covenant to fuck off. Noble Team went to work once more to try and break this stalemate, infiltrating the Covenant supercarrier in charge of this whole mess with the intent to destroy it with a jury-rigged bomb made out of a slip space drive that a frigate had lent them. That was a lot of lore-based techno-jargon nonsense, so let me simplify that for you. Take FTL drive, put it in Covenant ship, turn it on, and watch the Covenant vanish. It was successful, and the carrier alongside the commander of the operation were sent straight to whatever the hell dimension slip space is, alongside several other Covenant ships nearby. Don't screw around with slip space drive, kids. That's a great way to get unpersoned. There's no chaos gods to pray to in desperate futility either, like with a warp drive failure. You're just gone. This unfortunately came at the cost of one of the few remaining Spartan 2s, George of Noble Team. Fellas, I know I just asked for this, but can we get an F in the chat for George? If nothing else, his last wish was honored.
Tell him to make it count.
And with that being said, it's time for some real hopelessness. You know the cutscene, I've showed it on this channel before. Hell, I've had the Remembrancer voice over it. Go subscribe to him, by the way, and the rest of the Lore Crime fellas while you're at it. Plug, plug.
Yeah.
But just for funsies, let's look at the cutscene in all its glory so you can really appreciate what happens right after the UNSC's successful Hail Mary.
Slip space rupture detected.
Gamma station control, reading multiple pings below the orbital descent
Slip
grid.
space rupture detected.
Yeah, we're picking up anomalies too. Are you reading
Oh my god.
Slip space rupture detected.
Are you fucking kidding me?
The whole damn Covenant
Slip
fleet.
space rupture detected.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Covenant are officially balls deep in Reach. Funnily enough, UNSC High Command was annoyed with this because they really wanted to board that supercarrier and take it over so they could go ahead with the plan to kidnap a prophet. Because that's the most pressing issue facing them right now. The largest Covenant fleet you've seen up to this point just showed up to turn your planet into stained glass, but no, keep trying to kidnap—
Oh my god. It's like... Well, if they want you to feel the true despair and the futility of this fight, then yeah, they would have to give you that little bit of hope, right? Like, oh, we sacrificed everybody to get here, and finally we were able to destroy that massive ship that took out our best weapons on this planet. But yeah, no. A few seconds later, it's just like, yep. How about 10 more? Morale is low. Morale is incredibly low, and I'm not even playing the game right now.
priests with those super soldiers you're holding back from actually helping. At this point, the Covenant just started landing wherever they could. No more stealth operations like with earlier, where they were hunting for
it's
artifacts.
full-on
The Covenant
invasion.
was waging war now. While still hunting for artifacts as their religion dictated, it was now business as usual for them. Deploy overwhelming force and wipe out any and all human life located on Reach. The orbital MAC cannons, while still wiping out Covenant ships left and right, were now being targeted and destroyed by both a mass Covenant assault combined with previously unknown battleships with sniper-like capabilities. The Halcyon-class cruiser Pillar of Autumn, hope that name sounds familiar to you, was one of the many ships involved in the space battles over Reach. It had intended to go ahead with Operation Kidnap the Pope anyways, when, surprise surprise, another Covenant fleet showed up helmed by the elite Thel Vadami, also known as the Arbiter, though that doesn't happen quite yet. At this point, it's nearly August 30th. The battle—
Oh yeah, that's right. Within the timeline, this is pretty early on. So the Arbiter hasn't kind of shifted sides just yet.
Going on for over a month, and things were getting more and more grim for the UNSC. Over the course of the battle, civilians had begun to be pulled off the doomed world, such as during the evacuation of the city of New Alexandria. Despite this, the overall situation was that the UNSC was getting its ass handed to it on a silver platter, while the Covenant told them to bite the pillow. Spaceborne assets continue to be destroyed despite a steady stream of reinforcements, and remember that these are 60% of the remaining UNSC ships. At this point, it's not even a Hail Mary, it's just a last stand to take as many of them out with the UNSC as possible. The situation on the ground was equally fucked. For every ship that successfully got civilians off the planet, there were another 10 either blown out of the sky or taken out before they could even lift off. Arguably, one of the worst parts of this was that the authorities kept just how bad things were in the dark from the general populace, which is very much in line with how the UNSC generally handled public knowledge of the war, but still kinda messed up. For a lot of
I mean, for the most part, everything was kept hush-hush. Like, even the creation of the Spartan 2s, they just randomly kidnapped kids, replace them with a clone of them that would die soon. That's so horrible. But no, it was necessary for the sake of humanity, right?
A lot of people, they thought that the army had the landing zones contained and things were going well. Then an elite would kick down the door going and gun down their family, and everyone was fully aware of just how bad things were. Individual soldiers and civilians might have had some amount of hope left, but anyone with any amount of clearance knows the situation for what it really is. Spartan Cat of Noble Team did that funny thing where her shield got EMP'd from the glassing and her brain got needle rifled, and the ground forces overall continued to lose ground as the Covenant had begun an invasion in earnest. Cities were being glassed daily, and you could see the fires on the planet from orbit as the inevitable Covenant victory
Holy
took
hell,
hold.
dude.
On August 30th, the final
I mean, it is freaking, it's just hell. Like, you're not making out of this alive. It's just over. And imagining myself being like a soldier or even a civilian on that, it's like, this is probably the end of humanity. Especially if you know the entire situation of the war, then yeah, it's just over.
day, things had come to a head. Rather than continuing to throw themselves against the remaining Mac batteries and lose more ships than they'd like, Covenant forces instead landed on the planet near the generators powering said Macs. Can't really bombard the thing keeping you powered, and even if they could and were willing to do so, a sustained bombardment from orbital Mac cannons is the kind of thing that ruptures a planet's crust. So the Spartan 2s are finally in the game properly now, just in time to not really make a difference, because while they were able to defend the power stations with some success, even evacuating a high-ranking admiral who would prank the Covenant pretty hard shortly afterwards, Reach's defeat was inevitable by this point. A majority of the few remaining Spartan 2s were killed in battle, and the defense stations remaining would not be enough to defend Reach with any amount of meaningful resistance. Take out a couple more Xenos with them? Absolutely, but hold off the Covenant? Not a chance in hell. The final stages of the Battle of Reach consisted largely of the UNSC trying to get its affairs in order if things went too far south. The Cortana fragment Halsey was using to dick around with Forerunner stuff was evacuated, and Halsey was brought to a separate location on Reach. Her and some others would be involved in some shenanigans that happened with Forerunner technology and fun stuff like that, but that's a whole other story. From there, the final acts of Reach once again centers around Noble Team, with a little bit of Master Chief in the Fall of Reach novel. Master Chief and some other Spartan 2s were deployed to a space station to scrub out of vital data, and then he and the Spartan Linda were brought to the Pillar of Autumn. Linda was clinically dead, which sucks for her, but UNSC tech is pretty good, so she could still potentially be saved. Meanwhile, Noble Team was going through it. George is dead, Kat's dead, and June realized he was in a prequel and dipped out on the first transport to the Halo Extended Universe. By this point, the military was either evacuating as fast as it could or was splattered all over the ground. The last remaining battle of note was that of Azov's shipyard. Noble Team was able to successfully deliver the Cortana fragment to Captain Keyes containing vital Forerunner data that would be put to use in the coming months, but it came at a cost, as you should expect by this point. Carter sacrificed himself because while he didn't have the firepower to get Noble 6 and Emil to the shipyard, he had the mass. Emil was cheap-shotted by some zealot bastard, and Noble 6 remained behind to fire on a Covenant battlecruiser and ensure the Pillar of Autumn could escape the doomed world. On August 30th, 2552, the Battle of Reach had officially ended with the escape of the Autumn away from the planet. A dozen Covenant ships followed in pursuit, and the events of that little escapade are well documented, shall we say. The aftermath of the battle does have several things worth talking about, but at another point in time. For the Fall of Reach itself, the final thing I think is worth mentioning is Noble 6's last stand. At that point in time, they were more or less the last remaining soldier openly holding their ground on Reach. It's very worth mentioning that canonically, Noble 6's final stand lasted several hours and involved an entire Covenant army going to fight them. Countless Banshees, Wraiths, and other supporting units on top of thousands of Covenant infantry were required to take this bastard down. Noble 6 destroyed wave after wave of Covenant forces before finally being killed by a group of elites. And yes, they're very much dead. They're not in a cave somewhere, they bit the dust. Fellas, I know this is the third time I've made this joke, but can we get an F in the chat for Noble 6? Whether you had them be male or female, whatever armor configuration you had them equipped with by the time of Lone Wolf, they earned the designation of hyper-lethal without a doubt. And with that...
Oh, okay. I didn't know that you could customize your own character here for the role of Noble 6. But that's pretty badass. I mean, you're a Spartan too, right? So you are kind of a super soldier, and in lore you'd be able to take on that many, but it's just not enough. There's too many of them. And respect for, you know, going down swinging.
Their death, Reach had officially fallen. And honestly, this is one of my favorite stories/events in Halo, and sci-fi in general for that matter. In my favorite universes of Warhammer and Halo, there's oftentimes a grand picture being worked towards, or an air of mysticism somewhat present. Like when you're fighting demons from hell, there's some grander things at work than this just being a battle. Or the battle itself is over some ancient artifact, or to perform some ritual to allow something like a deity to be born, or for some...
This applies to really any strategy game, or I guess to go even further, really any game at all. It just gives you a greater motivation to continue to, well, in this case, read the story, or in video games, obviously play the game. Knowing how significant an event is and what exactly it means for the greater universe as a whole really helps to increase my personal immersion within whatever is currently going on.
Something to be summoned into real space from ages past. And that's just within Warhammer. Within most other Halo games, it'll be ultimately about the Forerunners and their ancient, almost magical technology and how it can change the galaxy. Or how the Flood, a parasite from beyond the galaxy forged from the remains of living gods, has returned to eat everyone. That's still somewhat present in Reach, but it's not the focus at all. Well, yes, you fight in front of the Forerunner RGB gaming structures, and the Covenant find Reach initially because of the Forerunner artifact GPS thing. There's not really any focus on either of those things. The first one holds no impact on the UNSC because the Forerunner structure itself doesn't hold any potential avenue to victory. It's just a big wall that some scientist lady says is super important for real, guys. As for the Covenant finding Reach because of the artifacts, again, these artifacts play no part in the battle at large. They cause the initial invasion, but then it turns into just another invasion, albeit one that's the largest of the war. The eventual result of Halsey's research into the Forerunners is very specifically not using the supposed discovery against the Covenant, because if they do, everything ever dies. At the end of the day, this is just a sci-fi war story, and a pretty goddamn grim one. The ending scene may involve Noble 6's helmet being shown in a field of green showing things are recovering, but that's decades after the fact and only because of a concentrated terraforming effort. We know that it leads to John Halo finding the rings and ending the war later down the line, but it hardly makes the events that happen any less miserable. As far as the tone of the story goes, everyone involved is pretty convinced the end isn't far off. Humanity's strongest bastion has been found, and it's not gonna hold. And with it,
I mean, once again, in universe, that's exactly what you would think. Like, there's no coming back from this. You've financially been ruined. The war is over. But, you know, you're still alive, so you gotta keep fighting. And I do like how it's implemented, because we have so many different, I guess, enemies or conflicts that we could focus on. But with each different game, it focuses on a different aspect of the universe and of the conflicts between certain races. Sometimes you get all of them involved, other times you have a more focused story. It keeps things fresh, and I guess gives you a more dynamic experience, if that's the way that you can describe that. Makes the world feel more alive, you know? Which then makes me wonder if, say, obviously, like, I experienced the Halo story through lore videos and stuff like that, but if you experienced it simply through the games, what would your experience be about the world building, and like how much would you understand simply from just, you know, looking at the architecture, the level design, the weapons, or the interactions between certain races? Because when a game has really good world building, you can just feel it, and you get this, I don't know, it's, I don't think that there's a word to describe that exactly, but it's just contentment, I guess, is the closest I can come up with. That it just feels satisfying, that it feels like an actual living and breathing world, and you feel the weight of the consequences of your actions upon that world. I hope Halo Reach here reaches that. Well, Reach. Yeah. Anyways, I hope it reaches that kind of feeling for whoever plays it.
With it gone, there's almost nothing left to produce more weapons with. Supplies are gone, manpower's been obliterated because 60% of the UNSC fleet threw themselves into the fire in a desperate hope to hold off the Covenant, and it didn't work. The novelization and Halo Reach itself are both essentially one long rearguard action to try and get something out of this mess. A mess where every alien they kill is replaced with 10 more as the Covenant just keep warping in more reinforcements. It's a brutal war story where defeat is a foregone conclusion. Almost everyone in the lore reacts to the Covenant finding Reach with either terror or resignation, and even the marketing for this goddamn shitshow was from the beginning, you know the end. Reach may not have led to the end of humanity. We know that from the fact it's a prequel, but as far as the universe was concerned, it was 5 minutes before that inevitability. Halo nowadays has turned into an endless stream of one-upping the last thing. You've suddenly got the Banished being portrayed as a threat equal to the Covenant, or whatever the hell the Endless are. Reach wasn't like that. The whole story is a tale of humanity getting its shit pushed in, where the greatest victory to be had is one guy and his VTuber girlfriend escaping into the void to hopefully find something helpful. Its hopeful end.
I mean, Cortana's, technically kind of that.
And only exists for us because we know the war ends and humanity is saved, and god damn it, I love it. Nostalgia aside, and yes, I admit there's a lot of that, this story both in the books, the game, and as a general lore event are one of my favorites. But I can only fillet Halo for so long before it gets tiring even to me, so I'll just leave it off with this. While the game's atmosphere and tone are that of utter futility, it's also one of defiance. Humanity might be going down, but not easily. And in a showing of bravery that would make the Imperial Guard salute, the UNSC held the line on Reach until the planet was literally melting into glass, and then
Cadia fell before the Guard. And if you can get the respect of the Guard for holding the line, then you know you did a good job.
Claimed it decades later. Well, recently Halo's been double downing more and more on the UNSC being this ultra-fascist nightmare state trying to be a bargain brand Imperium of Man like what every Stellaris player makes. As shown in the Fall of Reach, they're an organization doing its best in a situation that's beyond hopeless. No soldier on that planet went down easy, and every inch of soil burned was paid for in Covey blood. I'm still choosing elite preferred species when I have a choice in the matter, however. As always, thank you to my wonderful channel members. You are the Assad shipyards to my Reach. A launching point to secure my future in these dark times. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching, and take care out there. Seriously though, this cutscene would have been just perfect if Kat punched through the glass and crushed Halsey's head like a grape. Kat best girl, 10 out of 10. Except when she's driving, holy shit. At least June was gonna put a bullet in her skull if the Covenant were able to capture her, or looked like they were going to capture her, or even appeared on radar within a couple miles of them. Also, can you imagine if Emil didn't get stabbed and Noble 6 was able to board the Pillar of Autumn? Combat Evolved would have been 3 levels long and consist of nothing but the Covenant getting their shit pushed in. Wouldn't have even had time to unleash the Flood. They would have been assassinated before they could even read the "Don't Dead Open Inside" scrawled on the containment chamber.
I'd love to know what your experience was like playing Halo Reach, if you were like a Halo fan, or I wonder if you could play the games chronologically, and if you could play Halo Reach first. What kind of experience would that be? But yeah, let me know what you guys thought of Reach, and thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.